Hi everyone, thank you for joining us, much appreciated, especially so close to the end of term. Good to see the few of you here, and hopefully we'll have a few more people joining before the end. As always, with these events, if you would like to ask a question, and we massively recommend that you do, because you've got an expert in a field that you're obviously very interested in coming to talk to you at the moment, then please just add it to the chat on this Zoom call. Very easy to do. You'll know how to do it. If you really feel you can't enter it directly here, then just email me directly and I'll be able to ask our guest a question after her presentation. So we're very lucky today. We've got Professor Clair Gammage, who's from the law school at the University of Exeter. It's a brilliant UK university, fantastic campus, lovely location, and also very strong for law. So she's going to be giving us a bit of an oversight for law at Exeter and some areas of law in general. I think law, when I look at personal statements, when we're doing the applications, it's one of the more complex applications I always find. And those personal statements can be some of the more tricky ones to write. So really, if you do have any questions at all, do please put them in the chat and we can add them to Professor Gammage at the end. So I'm going to hand over now. Claire, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, and thanks so much for welcoming me here today. It's a real privilege to be with you all. I'm just going to share my screen as I've prepared a presentation for you, so just bear with me while that loads. There we go. So after that very kind introduction, I'm here to speak to you this morning about studying law and career prospects of a law graduate. And I'm going to speak to you a bit about that in the context of the University of Exeter, but I'd also hope that you take away from this that the skills that you'll gain from your law career will be very broad. You'll be able to use them in lots of different career pathways within and outside of the law, and I'll speak to you around some of those points as we go through. So when we are asked the question, why study law? Everyone comes at this from a different perspective, but these are some of the common reasons why people choose to pursue a law degree. The first is because students genuinely want to pursue a degree that will spark their curiosity intellectually. There are so many different subjects that you'll study in law, and it gives you the real opportunity to examine the intersections between law, power, governance, criminal law, contract law, things to do with business, things to do with social justice. There's lots of different areas of law that you can study as an undergraduate. And as I go through this presentation, I'll explain to you how Exeter structures its programme to enable you to do different types of subjects within that. So that's a core reason students do it. They like the intellectual rigour of a law degree, and they like the fact that they are able to do things that will enable them to perhaps engage with society. So it's almost like a civic duty. They can go into the law to protect people's rights. Everybody in the law is entitled to representation. So some of our students will go on to work for the prosecution, some may go on to work for defence, some may not go into the criminal system at all. In fact, the majority don't. The majority go into commercial law or family law, medical law. So there's lots of different ways that people see a law degree as enabling them to pursue some kind of civic duty in society. This also extends to, different career opportunities, as I put at the bottom there, outside of law. So a law degree equips you to go into other types of areas of employment, things like civil society organisations, politics, international relations, tax, accountancy, consultancy, advisory work. You gain so many key skills as a law student that it really does enable you to go off into different career pathways. Now, an obvious reason that students would choose a law degree is because they're interested in justice. Now, justice is itself a very broad idea. So you could have social justice, which is what we are almost familiar with. But there are also things like digital justice. We're currently in a very globalized environment. So, access to data and sharing data, the transfer of data also raises questions about justice. We're also in an area that's very concerned with environment and sustainability. And so this could be around environmental justice. There's lots of different aspects to justice that students like to engage with in their law degree that enables them to go off and pursue those different career pathways afterwards. As I said there, once you're in practice, so if you were to pursue a law career, there are lots of different practice areas. So you end up going into things that are far more specialized. For example, you may have a general interest in commercial law, but actually go on to specialize in competition or mergers and acquisitions, or banking and finance. There's very specific niches that you go on to specialize in. Similarly, you may go on to do something like planning or estates or construction. So it's really diverse. Every type of thing you can think of has a regulatory space that a lawyer needs to be involved in. So there's really sort of broad scope for careers. And as I've hinted at the beginning, it's about skills development. When you join a law school, we are immediately thinking about how we can equip you as a graduate to go off into a career pathway, be that within law or outside of law, that enables you to be a global citizen, in effect, that gives you those skills, interpersonal skills, advocacy skills, communication skills, written skills, to be successful in whichever career pathway you go into. So why then should you choose Exeter? So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the Exeter Law School. I'm currently the Director of Global Engagement in the school, but I'm also a Professor of International Commercial Law. So I do teach our students. We've just come to the end of our academic term, and I can say to you that our students are very happy. They enjoy the courses and they enjoy the different elements of our programme. Now, as a university, we are a top university in the UK, and we are situated within a beautiful part of the southwest of England. It's actually one of the safest parts of the southwest. So crime rates are very low. It's a very beautiful area. And we are situated within a campus that has won awards for its environmental sustainability. So as an institution, our core values are around social justice and sustainability. And this flows all the way through to our law school. As you can see from the rankings on the screen that will be shared with you afterwards, we rank very highly across all of our metrics. And in the law school itself, we're on an upward trajectory. So in 2022, we were ranked 12th in the UK for the Complete University Guide. So this is a real promising, position for us as a law school. And we recently had our Research Excellence Framework outcome last year, so that placed us 17th in the UK for our research. So in Exeter, you would be coming into an environment as a student that really does place an emphasis on quality in teaching and quality in research. As I mentioned earlier, we're keen to ensure that you finish as a graduate that can go off into the world and do whatever career you want to do. Now, our scholars in the school have been engaging in impact, as we call it, which is when we go out and work with people outside of the university. So, for example, last week I was giving evidence to Parliament about international trade. Our research should be seen as world leading outside of the institution, and so we try and encourage our students to adopt the same approach, to look beyond your degree and how you can use those skills for the betterment of society. We embed a range of innovative teaching and assessment methods, and these can be quite different from law school to law school. So I encourage you, when you're actually starting to think about which law school to approach and to apply for, ask them questions about how they teach, ask them questions about how they assess, and think then about what skills you want to gain as a law degree, within your law degree, so that you can then pursue whatever career pathway you go into afterwards. Now, at Exeter, we offer a range of different programs, but I'm really only going to talk to you about the LLB Honours, which is our 3-year program. But you can see we offer a range of different programs there, with a year abroad, for example, in Europe or elsewhere. We also offer a 4-year matrice, which gives you the LLB in law and a master's in French law. So that's where Exeter really makes a unique intervention in terms of what we offer. And we also offer dual LLB JD with the Chinese University of Hong Kong. But as I say, what's really, I think, relevant to most students at this stage is the LLB Honours. Now, the way that we structure our law degree is that we have a very firm focus on skills from the moment you join the school. So in every law school across the United Kingdom, you will have a set of modules that are compulsory, modules that you have to take. Now, these used to be known as the qualifying law degree modules. However, we've had a change in the UK's legal regulatory framework. This means that when students finish their law degree, you no longer do what we used to call the training contract, in the sense of what it used to be. Now you do what we call the solicitor's qualificatory examinations, if that's the path you want to go down. This has meant that some of those core modules are no longer considered to be qualifying law degree modules, But because we take students from a range of different backgrounds, and because we want to ensure that our students have that core legal knowledge, we have kept them as compulsory modules in our programme, and you will find that most, if not all, law schools in the UK have done so. This is really important because if you were to return to Malaysia to practice, it means that you've got that qualificatory background that you need to then go off and practice in Malaysia. So in year 1 and year 2, we give you all of your core compulsory modules. This gives you greater optionality throughout the second and the final year. Now, this has been carefully constructed to give you as much choice as possible in the latter part of your degree. Why? Because it takes a little while for our students to really become accustomed to writing law assessments, to really get to grips with the foundational principles of law that they need to know. So students tend to excel in the second and final years when they've got more optionality. And this is in response to what our students wanted. So in the first year of your programme, you'll do contract, constitutional and administrative, criminal and legal foundations. Now, legal foundations is our core skills unit throughout the first year, and this will help you to understand how to write, how to apply your legal understanding to contemporary problems, and how to approach your law degree in general. We've this year introduced a really innovative way of teaching contract law and criminal law, and this is through workshops where you will work with students in small groups to do sort of applied learning throughout the year. So it's really exciting. In constitutional and administrative, and in some of the units in the second year, for example, like torts, EU, equity and trust and land law, you're going to do more of the conventional style teaching and learning, which is a lecture followed by a seminar, which is a 2-hour period of teaching. In the final year, as I say, you get optional units. Now, optional units may change from year to year, but an example would be things like being able to do general principles of international law, human rights modules, commercial law or corporate law. There's a very wide suite of options that are available, and you can see these on our website. So do take a look. We allow students in the final year to take options that would ordinarily be available in the second year, but you have to take the majority that are at a level 6, which is your final year level. This is different to some other universities who will spread those compulsory modules across 3 years. So as I say, do check with universities how they structure their programs. Now, as I've hinted at already, at Exeter, we really do try to practice what we preach, so to speak. Our researchers are our teachers, and we also have teachers here, or lecturers, who are specialists in legal education. So Exeter is really fortunate in that we have a critical mass of colleagues who are experts in how to teach law. And so we bridge together all of our areas of expertise to develop a really innovative and exciting curriculum for our students, and one that embeds both research expertise but also a practical application of the law. Now, what I mean by that is that you would be enabled to approach your law assessments in different ways because we structure them differently. You may have to do essays, but you may also have the opportunity to do what we would call like a portfolio assessment, where you bring together different pieces like a reflective essay or a blog and an essay. We also have a really innovative approach to our trusts law module, which is an applied learning method that gives you a pack and you have to interpret the legal problem as if you were a practicing lawyer. So alongside that, we also have lots of practice-based exercises embedded within the 3 years of your programme, offered primarily but not exclusively by our societies around mooting, negotiation and mediation. So these enable you to strengthen those core legal skills that you would be expected to develop throughout your time at university. In terms of where our students go on, we have very good graduate outcomes. Now in the UK, we take this data 15 months after students have left us. And that gives us a percentage of nearly 90% of our students being in graduate level employment at the moment. So that's excellent. As I say, we have different teaching methods here. In addition to our teaching, we also support our students through the provision of what we call office hours, where you can drop in and see us if you have a question about anything you're studying. But we also have a really strong academic personal tutoring system. Now, your academic personal tutor is there to support you throughout your time on your degree program to think about where you're going with your career, but also to help you to deal with any issues that may come up throughout your degree program in terms of academics or well-being. So we really do prioritize our students' well-being, and it's important that our students are happy and that our community is vibrant and diverse and inclusive. So your academic personal tutor is your point of contact throughout the year. In our law school, we like to encourage our students to be engaged in areas of our research. And we have different research centres operating, as you can see there. And these research centres will also host events that students are very welcome to attend. So if you develop, for example, an interest in family law, you can go to our world-leading family law scholars. Exeter is known for family law, actually. It's an excellent centre for socio-legal research and family law. And you can work with the leading scholars in the field and learn from them direct. So it really is a community where we invite our students to get to know us and to be part of co-producing things throughout their time with us. I've just given you a snapshot of some of our experts, just to give you a range of the diversity of things people work on. So we have one of our professors working there on digital identity and health certificates, which is obviously extremely important in the context of the global pandemic. Our current interim head of school, Professor Luzak, is an expert in European consumer protection law and works closely with European agencies. Dr. James Griffin is one of our intellectual property lawyers. So if you're interested in how to protect creativity and how to protect innovation, we offer modules on IP that you can study as an undergraduate. And he's currently working on things like 3D printing processes. So lots of interesting things going on in that space. And Professor Machak is currently with the International Committee of the Red Cross in Geneva, but he's one of our leading scholars on cyber warfare. So that gives you a sense of just how diverse the areas are within the law school and our expertise. As I've mentioned, we are really proud of our inclusive student community. We attract students from all different backgrounds. So if you join Exeter, you would have the opportunity to be part of something really exciting. We have different student-led societies that you can join. What I've put on the screen there are the law society, the different law societies. The Guild, which is effectively our students' union, has lots of other student societies that you can join. So do take a look. It's a great way of networking. And of course, given that the focus of this presentation is on, why you should study law and what careers you might have if you study law, you should be thinking about your society involvement and engagement as co-curricular activities that are good for your well-being, but that also give you an opportunity to network and to meet new people, and they will also then become your network once you leave university. So it's a really good way of meeting people outside and within your discipline. We also have opportunities within our school to do pro bono work, and I'm going to show you a very brief video if it works. Let's see. Just bear with me. How do we support you in the school to build your brilliant careers? Well, that law clinic, I really encourage you to watch that video because it gives you a sense of, not only who my colleagues are, and they're wonderful, but also the important work they do. We are really lucky at Exeter in that we have in-house provision to support you as a law student to think about what you want to do with your law degree. So from the moment you join us, you will have the opportunity to engage with our careers teams in the law school, but also across the university. So you can think about how to develop your skills either within law or to become a non-lawyer. So whatever you want to go into, be that, government perhaps, or management, whatever. We encourage students from the moment they join us to think about the skills they'd like to acquire. I always encourage my students to keep a really open mind and to try and build a broad portfolio of skills, because you never know what you might feel like at the end of your degree. You may come into your degree, you might be like me. I hated my law degree when I first started, but by year 3, I decided this was absolutely what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And so I was glad that I'd kept my options open. So try to be, curious, explore different options that are available to you. And there's obviously so much that goes on within the societies in the school and in the guild that you've got loads of opportunities to really think about this. Our careers advice and guidance teams will help you with things like CV writing. They will help you with things like putting together applications. We encourage students who are thinking about a career in law to think about vacation placements and training contract applications in their second years, really, but there are some firms that offer first year placements. And for students who are thinking about other career pathways, we will provide that tailored support to enable them to put those applications together so that when they are finished with their degree, they are able to make that career choice that they want. So we run a number of events throughout the year. It's not just the societies that hold events. We hold lots of events with employers. We invite our employers into the university, and sometimes our students go off to their place of employment to really hear about what it's like to work in a particular industry. It's really important to take sort of informed advice around what to do, and we really try and provide that to our students. In addition to those sort of core employability skills, we also have opportunities through our Exeter Law Review, for example, to enable students to write for us, to write for magazines. There's also university magazines. So there really is, whatever you want to do, there will be an option for you to do that whilst you're at the university. And you may well see your academic personal tutor or the law careers advisor for guidance about how to achieve those goals. But you can certainly be proactive in looking for those opportunities yourself. So I'll end it there, but I'm very happy to answer any questions you might have, including around personal statements and all the rest of it. So thank you.
Thank you. That was fantastic. I think a really good, clear overview of the structure of law, and we maybe and law training in the UK. We'll maybe come back to some of those points in a bit. We actually have got some questions straight away. It's good to see. And I know a few people joined us a little later. As always, just any questions you want, put them in the chat function here or email me directly. Either is fine. So you can see probably there in the chat there, you've got a couple of questions. They're a little bit the same side of the same coin, these questions. So one is really asking you for...
I can't see them. So
oh, okay. Well, I shall read them to you, no problem.
Thanks.
So if you could give one piece of advice to high school students about planning their studies and careers in law, what would it be? And this is a bit of a spin-off from that. What would you have done differently in high school, knowing what you know now about a career and law and work experience? So there you go. What would you have done?
I mean, there's a great question. So I will be perfectly frank with you all that when I was in school, I really wanted to be a doctor. And I went to a hospital and I realized there was no way I could pass the first year of the medical degree because you have to do things to dead bodies that I knew I physically cut open anything. So I thought, okay, what else can I do? And I sort of went into panic mode and I did the tests that told me I'd be a good architect or a good lawyer. And I decided, okay, I'll do law. Now, the mistake I made was that I probably didn't read the brochures well enough back in that day. And I kind of went on a whim and just thought, well, it sounds good, I'll do it. So I think you're already doing a lot more than what I did when I chose my career pathway, because you're actually engaging in opportunities to really think carefully about it. So I think the one thing I would have done differently was been more informed. I think a law degree can open doors for you in so many different career pathways. And I think that's the key thing to remember. Doing a law degree does not mean you have to practice law. You could go into academia like myself, you can go into different pathways, but it honestly gives you such a strong and robust skill set. Employers really like it. It is a degree that is held in very high regard around the world. And UK law degrees in particular are still renowned for being rigorous and having that sort of important grounding in core skills and legal education that other countries really do value. So I think that what was the first part of the question?
So the first part was, what bit of advice would you give to someone? What single bit of advice? And the second was, what would you have done differently? They were the two. So.
Yeah, so I think that what I would encourage you all to do is, if you're at the stage now where you're thinking, yes, I know I want to do law, start to look at which schools you think fit you best. So it's not just about going to the school that perhaps has the highest ranking. It's about the school that will work best for your teaching and learning styles, about the school that will enable you to have the most opportunities. If I'm being honest, most UK law schools will offer very similar things in terms of, employability, in terms of teaching, but think about where you might be happy. And that takes some reflection. talk to your family, talk to your friends, and think about where the people they know have gone. But I would say, take that informed approach of really exploring what it is you like and where you think you will be happiest.
Okay, and we've got another question that's come on, Claire. Thanks for that. I've got a few coming in, which is great. Saves my questions, which is always good to hear. What are the qualities that universities and indeed further down law chambers, and maybe again we'll come back to some of the technicalities here, most valuing students? What you say the qualities are that they're most looking for?
The qualities that they tend to look for once we've got students into the school, you're encouraged to achieve the highest grades you can. I mean, that's really important, is strong academic profile. But they look for a lot more than that. They're looking for well-rounded, all-rounded individuals. So the qualities they look for are really good interpersonal skills, and you can gain those, building academic confidence, building personal confidence by being involved in societies. And those societies don't have to be law-based. Remember that law firms take approximately 48% of their intake each year from non-law backgrounds. So only about half of their intake each year is from a law-based degree. So law firms are looking for people who are all-rounders. They actually really like to see the way that you can talk about how your other activities have given you skills that equip you for legal careers. So, for example, say that you're a really avid sports person. You don't have to be good at sports, but let's just say that you really like playing hockey or something like that. That then it has to be translated into language that they understand, which is, I'm a team player. I work to strict deadlines. I always turn up. I'm someone who works really hard. Those sorts of qualities are what they're after. So they want to see that if they hire you, you're not just someone who's going to sit at your desk and just work really hard because you've got good grades. They want to see that you're going to contribute positively to their environment. And I think that at the moment, it's just about being able to explain the skills you've gained. For example, some of our students have to work throughout their degree. How does your employment show that you've got the qualities that are relevant to a firm or to a chambers or to a non-law firm?
Thank you, Claire. I just thought I'd go on to the next question. Just on a technical point. Obviously, you mentioned there, law firms taking people from other disciplines, and obviously sometimes that's to work in other aspects of them. But where they are going into actually work in the law aspect of that, often those students would have done something called a graduate diploma in law. And I'm wondering what you think about that route, because that is something we get asked about a lot. I'm interested in history, for example. Should I do a history degree and then I can convert this later on? Do you have much advice for students with that particular balancing act?
Yeah, so we've moved the shift to the solicitor's qualificatory exams means that pretty much anyone without a law background can apply to do those tests and, potentially become lawyers. The reality is that you should still get that grounding in a graduate diploma of law of some sort, because as a law academic, I am very biased, but I think you need that core foundation, and that takes time. Learning how to analyze a legal text, learning how to understand the language, learning how to interpret things takes a couple of years at least, and the rest. So the graduate diploma route is another way forward. I would encourage anyone who wants to practice law to actually do some kind of law degree rather than trying to do, the SQE, for example, without having one. I think there's values to both routes, but I am still someone who firmly believes that the law degree is the best way forward if you want to practice law, not least because if you do a law degree, you've got a really good degree anyway, but you've had 3 years of being able to explore different areas of law, and it gives you a really good insight as to whether that's going to be a career you'll enjoy. Whereas if you go in having done another degree and you go do a diploma, you don't get that length of time to really explore the different areas and see if it's the right path for you. So I think law degrees enable you to see at an earlier stage whether it's the right thing or not for you.
Okay, we've got 2 questions in, again, very similar, so read them together. So we've got, again, tips in terms of, as part of the application, things like activities that would look good, I guess, on the personal statement. And again, that continues into the next question, which is about things like debating teams, like Model United Nations, things like that, and how well perhaps they're viewed on the things like the personal statement or on the references that the school provides.
I mean, the best personal statement, we no longer do in-house sort of review of personal statements. It goes to our admissions teams. But in the days when we did used to look at them as a law school, The best ones were the honest ones. And I know that sounds really cliche, but it's where students are talking really honestly about how they believe their experiences will shape them to become a good lawyer. And that takes reflection on the part of a student to say, actually, what skills do I have here? And why does that then feed into a genuine desire to do law? Now, what is really difficult, I think, is that it is a young age to be thinking about the rest of your life. So, try not to put too much pressure on yourself and just think honestly, what have I gained from Model United Nations, for example? Well, I did that when I was 17 and 18. And what I gained from that, I think I remember talking about it as something as just being really fun and an opportunity to meet people and to learn a bit about international governance. And in reality, that is all it is, but the best part about MUN for me was that it was fun. And so I think it's around speaking, about the skills that you gain. What do they like to see? They like to see well-rounded individuals. So any kind of co-curricular is relevant. Don't think that one thing is more relevant than another. Equally, they're not necessarily looking for you to have thousands of hobbies and interests. It's okay to have one or two that you're really into. And as I say, it's about relating what we like to see in our law degree applicants is what we like to see in our law students. The ability to apply that to whatever you're actually talking about. So how do those skills, how do your hobbies and interests actually tell us that that's why you're interested in pursuing law, or that's why you'd be good at studying law? So it's around thinking carefully about the skills, how they feed into that passion that you currently have for law. And the question I think that's hardest for people is, why do you want to do law? That's a really tricky question to answer, but again, just answer it honestly.
I think actually with the way we look at personal statements here is very much in a kind of topic-based approach, because we find that's the best way of generating interesting things. When you go from a standing start, trying just to talk about I did these things, quite hard.
Absolutely.
If you do it in relation to, well, I'm interested in this particular law thing that I read, or this aspect, and it becomes a lot easier. On that, I would add one of the topics that comes up most frequently is probably, because we are an international school, as you know, it's probably about international law. And I wondered if you had any tips for approaching it as a topic, because I think it's quite a tricky one to write about, actually. But I wondered what you thought in terms of looking at that.
So I'm an international trade lawyer, so international law is my thing. And what I would say to all of you is, the best statements I've seen that are dealing with international law are those that relate it to perhaps a piece that they've seen in the news, some contemporary global economy issue that they've read about. And it doesn't have to be a major world event. It could be something that's quite localized. It could be something that, is just interesting to you. So international law feeds into so many aspects of global governance. It could be what's going on in the China Sea. It could be the Ukraine-Russia war. It could be the current trade issues with Brexit. There are so many different elements around displaced persons. And I think that it's just around finding something that interests you and saying, actually, I'm not here to tell you all about international law, but I know that I'm interested in international legal frameworks and how they may facilitate or enable these types of governance issues to arise, and what the role of law might be in actually fixing them. And I think something just as simple as that, but being able to talk around the issue that has sparked that curiosity is really key.
That's fantastic. That's a really great and concise answer. So if any of you are thinking of that, do watch this video back later on. That'll hopefully give you a bit of an insight there. Now I've got a hand up.
Amazing.
We're going to have a live person question. This is unique experience here on all of these podcasts. Shamani, have you got a hand up? Did you want to turn on your microphone and speak? Possibly. I can see a hand. Did you knock the hand button by accident, or was it a genuine hand, Shamani? If you would like to turn on your microphone and/or camera and speak, you can.
I think Shamani's put it in the chat.
Oh, okay. Oh, she has. Oh,
okay,
sorry, Shamani. Okay, I see you put there. Thank you. Oh, so what she said was, what would be the law subjects required and the grades needed for entry? Well, that might be Cal, who's with us as well from Exeter. Do you want to answer that one, Cal?
Yeah, thank you. Basically for Exeter LLB Honours Law, we are looking for A levels A star, AA up to 3 A's in any A level subject. So you can provide any 3 best A level subjects that corresponds to the grades, except for the general paper that we don't accept as a grade. Yeah.
Thank you very much. That's great. And we had another one. What will admissions look for in interviews? Now, that does suppose that you actually are going to interview, which I'm not sure you do. Would there be any case study argumentation involved? Do you interview at Exeter?
We don't interview at Exeter, but I can give you some advice for the universities that do. In the UK, it's usually only 2 that will, Oxford and Cambridge are the main universities that interview. Unless their processes have changed, and I would reach out to the admissions teams to find out, there is usually some kind of case-based analysis that you're expected to do, like a piece of writing under timed conditions. And you will have a verbal interview where you can have more than one verbal interview. There can be a few whilst you're there. And they're asking you questions. They wouldn't expect you to know a lot about the law, but what they're expecting to see is your process of logic and deduction and reasoning, and your ability to really interrogate the way that they're presenting things to you. So they may well say to you things like, the world is flat. And then they're expecting you to show you your argumentation around why that is a flawed point. So it's really around developing that confidence before your interviews, around being able to push back in a polite way, being able to really explain yourself clearly and thinking on your feet, being able to deal with things that are unexpected. So if you're doing things like debating or Model United Nations, you're already well equipped to do this kind of thing. But the interviews, I would reach out to those universities and say, what is your current process? But it usually involves a mixture of both verbal interview and written assessment.
Yeah, and we will prep you within an inch of your life if you are applying for Cambridge. Don't worry about that. I will certainly be on top of that one. One thing that you might need to go, and actually off the top of my head, I can't remember Dexter. I think maybe this is a no as well, but it's the LNAT, which is obviously a test, an aptitude test for law, taken and accepted by a lot of law schools in the UK. Is that something done at Exeter? And I guess your opinion on that as well would be good.
Cal, do you know?
Yeah, we don't actually ask for LNAT for admission. No. So basically, it's your personal statements, your A-level grades, and your applications. Yeah.
Okay.
But other schools do ask for the LNAT, and I recently joined Exeter from Bristol, and Bristol does ask for the LNAT. And the LNAT is frankly, in my opinion, a bit of a strange test. It's kind of just assessing you on some of core competencies. Most students tend to do okay on it, so it's something I'd say not to overthink. I think you can do practice runs at it now. They've developed it so that you can actually do an example of it. But I would say to you, just try and relax and just answer honestly is the best way to do it, because then you're more likely to sort of show yourself in the written parts of the work.
Okay. Absolutely fantastic. Right, I think we've gone through all the questions in the chat. People still have time. We're going to run for another 5-10 minutes or so, and then we'll finish up. So I guess one of the other things that we always like to ask anyone, really, because obviously where our students are now, a lot of these students are in year 12, and obviously by the time they actually get to practicing anything, things do change, and we're obviously know that because of technology, things are changing much faster. What have you seen change a lot in law, and what do you think the kind of key areas of change are going to be over the next, I guess, 5 to 10 years, really, as these students go into practice?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. I mean, there are different changes associated with the sort of digitization of the global order, shall we say. So in terms of legal education, we've had to really rethink the way that we teach and the way that we engage with students. Believe it or not, before the pandemic, engaging with students across the world on online platforms was quite unusual. We used to just go out in person everywhere. So it's enabled us to reach students and scholars around the world in a much more accessible way, in a much more efficient way, a much more sustainable way. So that's certainly something that we've had to really learn ourselves as well. So legal education, for example, we're more innovative, I think, in the way that we now structure and package our curriculums. We're seeing digital tools as being able to facilitate our teaching, to enable students to engage with us in slightly different ways. In terms of the law more generally, you know, we're seeing this sort of fast-paced approach to digitization across different aspects of law. What is the role of AI in law, for example? What role is there for legal technologists? What role is there for AI in general? So there's lots of big questions about digital. And I think what we're going to see is that our students are going to have to become better equipped and knowledgeable about the digital environment in which they will be operating. And this will be things that, you know, universities will start to skill students up on, but also they'll skill up on it in firms. Firms are acutely aware of the sort of challenges and opportunities associated with the processes of globalization that we're facing. So I think we've got lots of interesting times ahead, and it will be fascinating to see how we respond to them, to be perfectly honest with you.
Fantastic. I mean, I think one thing maybe, just I think there might be another hand up. Great. One thing maybe is, has it had an impact on actual recruitment? I mean, has it? Are you seeing technology perhaps reducing the number of roles for trained lawyers, or increasing them even that way? I mean, can you see it in kind of stats of those kinds, do you think?
As far as I'm aware, it hasn't had an adverse impact on the number of people being recruited. If anything, I think they've just created different roles. So, you know, there are legal technologists working within law firms now. That role was never there before. So, you know, I think actually the digital era is enabling us to do work differently. Of course, I think roles will change. Things will be automated, and therefore you won't need people for those specific roles necessarily. But the nature of law is so personal. You have to have someone in front of you with that knowledge. And I know that there will be people who will argue one day a robot could do it. I don't believe that is the case. You know, each legal problem will have its own unique set of facts that may be very similar to another, but will have its own nuance and its own unique aspects to it. So I think what we're going to see is recruitment is still very strong in UK and international law firms. They are still recruiting top candidates each year. There is no sign of that slowing, and there is no sign or suggestion that they're going to start sort of reducing down the numbers of people they're hiring, as far as I know. Wonderful.
That's very good to hear for all the budding lawyers there. Plenty of jobs going for all of you still, and obviously in other sectors as well. I think, Claire, if you don't mind, I'm just going to finish finally, maybe just on some of the more technical areas of this. Again, I'm happy to take any more questions that go in the chat too. I think we covered that early bit, and this is one of the more kind of complex areas, but traditionally, if you were going on to practice law, you would have done something called an LPC, a legal practice course, which I believe still is the case. But what is that post? What is this, if you're going into practice law, say, for example, criminal law, which I know a lot of students initially think about, what would that route look like? How would that career path look in terms of the courses you would need to do and the work placements you might need?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a really important question now in terms of qualification in the UK. So we no longer have the law and practice course. We now have the solicitors qualificatory examinations, and they're structured in two parts. So the first part is an exam. It's an assessment that involves multiple choice questions on different core competencies, as they call them, across law. So I would encourage your students to look up the SQE by the Solicitors Regulatory Authority. The second stage to that, so once you've passed part one, the second stage is getting the equivalent of 2 years work experience in law, and that can take many different forms. The main thrust behind the change from the LPC to the SQE was to enable people from different backgrounds to be able to qualify as solicitors. So it means that people could do, you know, a 2-year apprenticeship, for example. What we're really happy about at Exeter is that if our students get involved with the law clinic work, that is work experience that counts towards the SQE. So it was signed off by our clinic and it counts towards it. So that's really great. The hours will add up. And that's sort of something that we can offer that some law schools do not. But ultimately, in reality, most students are still getting training contracts with law firms. So they're not really seeing a huge difference in the way that practical training side is being rolled out, as far as I'm aware. You know, it's still the typical doing your rotation through seats, doing different areas of practice, and then being signed off by the law firm. The difference is now everyone has to do that first stage exam, the SQE exam, which would have been the exams you did in the LPC before your 2 years training. Now, for the bar, if you want to go on to practice as a barrister, it remains much the same. You go off and do a bar practice course, but they may be different from one provider to another. And that is where you really have to show your core competence in advocacy, for example, and ethics, this kind of thing. And for those students who want to go into criminal law, for example, you would be encouraged to go the bar route, because there's very few solicitors, you know, that do that. In the UK, at the moment, we have a real crisis in our criminal law sector because of pay. So most students, as you say, come in thinking they'd like to do criminal law and very quickly realise perhaps it's not a career option for them. But in any case, if you qualify through the bar route, you have to choose whether you want to go sort of what we call the com bar, the commercial bar, or the other route.
Fantastic. That's a really good, again, concise description of it. Obviously, it's hard to take in all the information, but that you're starting to be able to see what these routes look like is really important. And I think you did obviously touch it on the presentation. But obviously, a lot of students here may be thinking of coming back to Malaysia to work. And just in terms of, I don't know if either you or Cal could maybe explain that process as well. That'd be great as well. If there's any additional things they would need to do back here in Malaysia.
So in terms of law, what they would need to do is they have to go home and do whatever the qualification is that's equivalent to our SQE or bar practice course. What we are very careful with in the UK, particularly in schools like Exeter, is to ensure that our structure of our curriculum actually meets the accreditation requirements of the bar standards agencies or the solicitors regulatory authorities in other countries. So if you come to Exeter, your law degree will absolutely give you that accredited status when you go back to Malaysia to go on and further your career. But you just then go through the same process, but it's just a different course that's obviously tailored to the unique needs of the legal sector in Malaysia. There is the hand up as well. I'm not sure.
Yeah, they did not SF. I'm not too sure you are SF. I've only got SF. So if SF, if you want to ask a question, you can speak. But I think you did put something in the chat earlier, so hopefully you've had your question answered. Perfect. But you're more than welcome to. What we'll do actually, just as we end and we shut down, if people want to stay on the line and ask direct questions in the last 10 minutes, they're welcome to do that. Because I know it can be trickier when there's lots of people on.
Absolutely. And if anyone has questions that they want to send through after, please do. You know,
you have got a question. Would you like to turn the microphone on and speak? Wonderful.
Yeah, sure. I have 2 questions. Sorry, can you guys hear me?
We can, yes, loud and clear. Lovely.
Oh, that's great. So my first question is, what advice would you give to students choosing their law specialty, for example, corporate or human rights? And also, what characteristics do you think would make a good corporate lawyer? Thank you.
Great. And you know what? Thank you for asking your question. It's the first time I've ever been asked one by a student on the course, so thank you. So in terms of what to choose, how to choose your specialism, where I think we're really lucky at places like Exeter is you have a lot of optionality. You get to pick your modules after you've done those sort of compulsory modules that we have to get you to do so that you can qualify back home. I always encourage my students to explore a range of different options, get a balance. Law firms don't actually really care what modules you've got. What they care about is the grades that you've got in those modules. So there is the space there to kind of play with what you want to do. So if you're thinking, oh, I'm not sure whether I want to do family law, I'm also quite interested in corporate law, take both of them. And you'll quickly start to realize, you know, that which one you find more interesting, which one you like. You should also try and go to as many employability events as you can around those different areas of law that you think you might be interested in. Because once you hear practitioners in the field speaking about it, someone will really inspire you to think, yes, this is absolutely the way I want to go. In terms of what characteristics make a good commercial lawyer, I think it's the same characteristics that make any good lawyer, to be perfectly honest with you. In commercial law, I think there's this impression that it's quite cutthroat and that it's, you know, it's very sort of ambitious and driven. I think really the best lawyers are those that have a really good understanding of the law, really good skills of argumentation, but who are also empathetic and who are able to develop good, strong working relationships with their clients, because ultimately you're working for someone, you are providing a service to a client. And so it's really important that you can build those good skills. Now, in terms of beyond that, of course, you need to be robust, you need to be resilient, and you need to be able to react quickly. Being responsive is very important as a lawyer. So I think it's that sort of combination of core sort of legal discipline specific skills of understanding the area, being able to give good advice, but also those interpersonal skills of being able to relate to lots of different people on different sort of levels and from different backgrounds.
Wonderful. And I think great to end on a question from the students live as well. So I think we're going to end the call there. And Claire, fantastic. Thank you very much. That was fantastic. Really enjoyed it. As I said,
thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Certainly has. And just like I say, if anyone does want to stay on, we're going to be on for maybe just another 5 minutes or so. So if you want to stay on and ask a question directly, as you've just heard, you can do that. Otherwise, thank you very much for coming, particularly, as I said, so close to the end of term. Really appreciate that. And thank you and good night. Please, you can leave the call now, and unless you want to stay on and ask a question. So thank you very much for coming.